During the Grandmasters 2019 Season 2 Asia Pacific Tournament in Taipei, in a post-match interview, Hong Kong native Chung Blitzchung Nung Wai, which I definitely mispronounced, and I apologize for all the mispronunciations that are going to come over here, appeared in a gas mask and eye protection and made the statement, "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our age." Casters duck behind their desk and they're heard laughing quietly and saying, "Okay, that's it, Blitz Bro." Blizzard responds with a year-long ban on Blitzchung revoking his earnings and stating they would not work with the casters again. This started a backlash that those who follow gaming media become all too familiar with. But as always, the dialogue often plays loose with the facts. Today we're going to look at the details of what happened, and hopefully by the end of the video you'll have a better understanding of what did occur. First, we need context. What does Blitzchung mean by liberate Hong Kong? Hong Kong was a part of China up until the end of the Opium War between China and the United Kingdom back in 1842. The Treaty of Nanjing that ended the war ceded Hong Kong and other territories to the British Empire. During World War II, Hong Kong was occupied by the Japanese Empire. The territory grew as Chinese migrants fled China's civil war after World War II that would end with the Communist Party's control of the mainland in 1949. As the 1970s grew to a close, Britain's 99-year lease on the territories came to a close, and negotiations with China opened to determine the future of Hong Kong. In 1984, Britain promised to cede Hong Kong to China in 1997 with the Sino-British Joint Declaration, while China promised Hong Kong's economic and political systems would stay intact for 50 years after the transfer. So here we are now, 22 years into that 50-year time period, and the relationship between the two entities is growing tense. To go over all the issues that led to Blitzchung's statement would be a video into itself. However, the current waves of protests revolve heavily around a proposed bill that would allow Hong Kong dissidents to be extradited to mainland China. Riot police used tear gas and rubber bullets as the protests grew. Supplies such as the eye protection and gas masks that Blitzchung used are actually becoming harder to find in Hong Kong. Supplies have failed to meet the sudden increase of demand. The other half of the context is Blizzard's relationship with China. Much of the outrage comes from a belief that Blizzard made this as a pro-China statement in order to keep their Chinese market strong. Blizzard games began appearing on the Chinese market in 2008, and Kotaku published an article in November 21st, 2018, quoting an unnamed developer stating that the upcoming mobile Diablo title, Diablo Immortal, was built for the Chinese market. Essentially, or let's start, open quote, essentially, it exists because we've heard China really wants it, end quote. Blizzard's official Weibo? It's so tempting to make a weeaboo joke, but this is China, not Japan. I'm going to call it Weibo. That's basically a Chinese Twitter clone. Blizzard's official account with them actually made an official apology to China in regards to the Blitzchung statement. Blizzard's Weibo statement translates to, "We are very angered and disappointed in what happened at the events and do not condone it in any way. We also highly object to spreading of personal political beliefs in this manner. Effective immediately, we've banned the contestants from events and terminated work with the broadcasters. We will always respect and defend the pride of our country." That's a lot to take in. At first glance, it's hard not to draw the conclusion that Blizzard has a pro-Chinese stance and lashed out at Blitzchung and the casters for political reasons. I personally don't like making snap judgments at first glance, though, so let's dig into the next layer of information and see what we find. Going forward, we're going to review Blizzard's actual rules, changes to the punishment, and the relationship between Blizzard and China. A lot of people question the harshness of the punishment. It definitely seems like a knee-jerk reaction. However, there is an official set of rules for the 2019 Hearthstone Grandmasters official competition. Blizzard quoted Rule 6.1, Rules O, as in Oscar, from their rules, which a PDF can easily be found online of them. Section 6 being player conduct and prize deduction, or rather, Section 6 is player conduct, and then point 1 of Section 6 is prize production. And standards of conduct. Rule O of that section states, engaging in any act that, in Blizzard's sole discretion, brings you into a public disrepute, offends a portion or group of the public, or otherwise damages Blizzard's image, will result in removal from Grandmasters and a reduction of the player's prize total to $0, in addition to other remedies which may be provided for under the handbook and Blizzard's website terms. Now, when you do have to make a split judgment call as an organization, the safe thing is generally to go to the book. While the public may not like it, the rules are there to be used, and while the goal of mine is not to opine on the issue as a whole, I have to say that on this specific topic of the reaction, if I were someone who had to make a quick decision on a dicey issue, making the decision where I could go back to management and say, I did it by the book, would be the decision that I would make. Blizzard's president, J. Allen Brack, spoke on the issue at BlizzCon on November 1st, stating, quote, "We moved too quickly in our decision making," end quote, which would align with the quick decision based in the handbook. However, we should also look at the company's relationship with China, as mentioned earlier. To start, the Chinese company Tencent once owned a major share of Activision Blizzard. However, mentioned less often in current running articles, that after Activision bought itself from Vivendi in 2014, that level of ownership dropped significantly. I just looked at CNN businesses trading information on Activision Blizzard earlier today, researching this video. This is November 3rd, 2019. And Activision Blizzard doesn't even include Tencent in the top 10 owners currently. In fact, the 10th largest owner only holds 1.38% of the company's shares. So while Tencent certainly still holds a share of Activision Blizzard, it is less than 1.38% of the shares that they hold. The other relationship that does need to be discussed is Activision Blizzard's relationship with the Chinese company NetEase. NetEase is the company currently developing Diablo Immortal for iOS and Android. It's also the company that licenses Blizzard's games for release in the Chinese market. What's not well known is that China has a law that only allows foreign companies to bring video games into China through operating agreements and partnerships with entirely Chinese-owned companies. NetEase is that company for Activision Blizzard, and they are, for all intents and purposes, Blizzard of China. In an interview on November 2nd with PC Gamer, Blizzard's president J. Allen Brack talked about the Weibo post that we mentioned previously, and the interviewer asked if this was written by NetEase, and Brack confirmed it. He said it was written entirely by NetEase without approval of Activision Blizzard, and states that they would not have approved it had they been given the opportunity to do so. He notes that Blizzard is not legally allowed to operate their own Chinese social media channels. Also in the interview, he states that Blizzard does allow for free expression of both its users and its staff, so of players and employees. They do not have any rules about political posts on social media, forums, social channels, etc. They only have these rules on official broadcasts, which he states are meant to be about the game itself. Brack quotes, "It's about the fact that it was not around the games. If we hadn't taken actions, if we hadn't done something, you can imagine the trail that would be in our future going around doing interviews. It would become times for people to make a statement about whatever they wanted to on whatever issue. That's just a path we don't want to go down." In the same interview, Blizzard states that NetEase was involved with the conversation of the punishment. They admit to this. They also say that Blizzard Taiwan and the Hearthstone leadership team and, quote, the esports team were all part of the conversation as well. I quote the esports team because I'm not really sure what is meant by the esports team. Blitzchung was not signed into an official team until after his suspension when he was picked up by Tempo Storm. Perhaps somebody watching who understands the organization of the esports groups a little better than I do can comment on that in the comments below. Activision Blizzard has since decided to return Blitzchung's earnings to him. They've cut his suspension down from a year to just half a year, and they've went back on firing the casters. Instead, they've just given them the same suspension that Blitzchung had. And that is where we stand as of right now in the current tale of Blitzchung, Blizzard, and the China-Hong Kong relationship. I'm curious to know how much of this is new to you guys and how much you already were aware of. Did this video change your mind of the situation? Do you have strong feelings one way or the other? Please feel free to let me know in the comments and like the video if you enjoyed it. I plan to make more investigative journalism style videos like this going forward. I really enjoy digging into the meat of these scenarios that people get very drawn to, these stories people get very involved with, and a lot of times the details are forgotten in the emotional immediacy. So I hope to have more soon, and I'll see you all then. Peace out.